Greetings, dear ones. I am Cryon of Magnetic Service. One of the questions that has been asked in the past, in the original days, when my partner and I first connected, what was the reason you came? And if you have not heard this before, dear ones, it's important you know. For the potential consciousness that humanity was heading in was going to rewrite the history and rewrite the potential of history and change the prophets of history of everything that would follow. Spirit, what you call God, is supposed to know everything. But Spirit, which you call God, does not know what you're going to do in free choice. And that is why you have called this a test. And it's not a test of your humanism, and it's not a test of your soul, and it's not a judgmental thing. It's a test of the planet. And you are a part of that. Consider yourselves those in expression in white coats, performing the experiment with the consciousness that you come in with and the complexities that you develop over time. If left alone without the knowledge of who you are, what would happen on the planet? For you to go into 3D and stay there, where would it go? Where would the vibration of this earth go with humanity if you didn't know what I know? And so it's the test of the consciousness of earth, of you, and it's a fair one. And it's what you do. And I arrived because of what you did. And there were many like me. And I wouldn't have come otherwise. But the potentials of the change before you we have seen before. And in the last 24 years, all of the information given in love, never conflicting, were to alert you to what you're doing now. To help you to hold on to what you have. To give you hope that there was purpose and an answer to the puzzle. And that's why we're here. And that is why we remain here. For you start to plant the seeds, and as you watch them grow, again, the energy will start shifting. And these are metaphors as what is going to follow. About the true essence of God as exemplified within the human being. The only way you can see God on earth is through humans. And you knew that. And so it is in your revelations as old souls and light workers that carry the visualization and activation of the perception of the divine. It's up to you. And so what follows, not very long, but profound, is yet another parable, and the first one given in the new energy after 2012. The parable is not that unique in the fact that the parable meanings are almost always the same, but given in a different perspective and circumstance. I want my partner to go slow, for we have a lot to say. And in the saying, there will be reflection. That is to say, you will see yourselves. This particular parable will not be sequestered to the ears in this room. but thousands will hear it and understand. And so we begin. The subject of all the Cry-on parables often is a man, but not really. We refer to him as woe, but he is both male and female, for he is a woe man. And in this we do not wish to genderize the human, but since you do automatically, we will call him a he. This is the story of woe and his box of belief. And it's a story for the times. And it's filled with purpose and honor. In lesson, realization, and awakening. And I want you to hear it correctly. Humans love stories, and so let us begin. Woe as a child grew up in a very loving family. And his mother and father took him to that which you would call an organized spiritual system of belief. Woe was exposed to this at a very early age, and it became his belief. And through his growing years, he learned more and more about it. And through his growing years, he learned to enjoy it. So that by the time Woe was an adult, he was fully invested in this belief. And we call it a belief box because it was restrained. That is to say, there was structure around it. In this belief box, the structure honored God. The structure is often necessary for humanity to create a system where things make sense for them. And it did in his box of belief. His father told him early on that there were rules around God. And Woe saw the sense of it. It made sense to Woe because it was just exactly as he would expect around himself and his friends. He was told many things. There was doctrine that would outline the rules that would please God and displease God. There were guiding emotions around what was and was not appropriate in life. There were rules to live by which made sense, that had integrity and honesty. And Woe accepted all of them slowly. Woe carried Scripture with him. Scripture from the prophets and from the prophets' prophets that were guiding lights in his life. And they made sense to him. He carried a pocket version of them with him all the time, so he would then remember what they had to say. In his worship time, he would select a master and pray to him. Woe was very pleased with his box of belief, and those around were also pleased with Woe. But the box had its limits. They weren't limits to Woe, but they were boundaries. His father had told Woe, be careful who you associate with. Because if they are not in our box of belief, that is to say, if they are not believers, then they can only be non-believers. And if they are non-believers, they have the ability to taint you, to affect you. They may even take you out of your belief system, and they are dangerous. And Woe always wondered who these were. As a child, he never saw them. All he saw was his playmates. But as he grew, he understood what his father said. Eventually, Woe, who lived in the Midwest of the United States, in a small town, with farming parents, found his niche, what he wanted to do. Woe was a structured man. He loved numbers. And so he became what you would call a numbers specialist or a bookkeeper, working in a small business in the small town. A 50-minute drive every day took him into town from the farm he had grown. And that's where woe met the ones that his father had warned him about. The associates that he worked around in the small cubicle office, surrounded by many men and women. And he realized they were different. And he was cautious and he was careful. And he didn't understand why they would want to say the things they had to say and take the name of God in vain. He didn't understand the promiscuity that he saw. He didn't understand the dishonor for God that he saw in the personalities. He didn't understand the drinking that went on. He didn't understand the things that were so obvious not of God and not in his box. And he would retreat to those of like mind and sit and worship and sing the songs that were so beautiful about the glory of God. He was taught about evil, and he was taught about a concept called sin. He was taught that those who did not believe in his box would not make it to meet the very God that he loved. And it was reasonable thinking. For those who would violate the rules of society, they don't make it either. They go to prison. It made sense to woe all around him, the God that he worshipped, and he felt the love of God. One time in the building that he worshipped in, there was a miraculous healing. You couldn't deny it. Beautiful it was. Someone he had known for a very long time with a disease that crippled them got up and walked and never had a chair again. It was the crippled chair. Amazing. And the leaders of this worship organization pointed to that and said, this is proof that our box is the right one. For we have God in our box. And then the admonition started to woe. Do not look at any other boxes of belief, because they don't have what we have. Their form of worship is incorrect according to our doctrine. And they would refer to the verses in the scripture as proof that they had the right God. And the other boxes were misled. Some of them might even be evil. And this was his life. Woe was not unhappy with his life. Going to work was frustrating because of those around him who were non-believers. He did not associate with them. He did not wish to talk to them. And they knew it. And then it happened. How do I describe this to you in a way that you can understand, human being? So I'll give it to you as it occurred. About 3 p.m, when everybody was at their desk, and he was consumed with the numbers, they barely heard it coming. The tornado struck like a fast freight train. Without warning, it began to chew up the town. At the outskirts of town, they heard it. There was no time to do anything. It was so fast, so big. Woe can remember more than anything else the terrifying sound, the ear-splitting noise of crushing granite, splintering wood, glass, bursting, people screaming. The lights were out, of course. The building began to collapse. So fast, all at once. He saw some of the office mates crushed before his eyes. He had barely time to get under his desk when the ceiling fell in and the floor opened up. And he began to cascade toward the ground. And then the lights went out and everything was quiet. And what happens next, dear human being, is the reality I want to talk about. And this may sound like a parable, but what happens next is real. But before I go there, I want to interrupt the parable right now with truth. How does God look at yo and woe? How does God look at woe? Does God see the box he's in and the prejudgment of other humans as wrong? And so here's what I want to tell you before we go any further. Woe found the love of God in his organization. To the spirit that I come from, we see the mythological box that humanity has created around God, not as inappropriate, but as a structure that is needed many times to find the core inside. And so woe was not inappropriate and he was not wrong. He learned the way he learned. Blessed is the human who finds God in any way where they turn inward and see the beauty that is there to see. God does not see inappropriate worship. God does not see inappropriate behavior. God sees the human searching for the core. And so I want you all to hear this, anyone, to know that if you are in an organization where the core is the worship of the one God and the Spirit and the creative source, you're on the right track. And humans may disagree. And humans may say, well, you're doing it wrong. And humans may say, well, you're missing the point. Humans may say, you're not supposed to put God on a pedestal and bow. I want to tell you something. That is the beginning source of realization of who God is. And some of them, being human beings, must walk before they can run. And it's part of the process. And I have a room of old souls who have walked many times, have been part of this kind of thing many times, have gone into battle many times because of doctrine. And now they sit in the room wiser and mature because of it. And now they don't need a structure or a box. So I want you to understand, before we go to the next step in this story, that there is no judgment ever of the search for God. Everything went black except for the music. Woe began to hear music. How do I describe this? It wasn't music. That requires ears. And woe had no ears at that moment, because where he was, he realized he wasn't alive, or wasn't alive as he knew he was alive. There was something odd going on. He was in a place, not a tunnel. It wasn't a cave. It was a path. A pathway that opened where all there was darkness around him, but he could hear the music. And the music wasn't really music. There was energy of sonority. And he recognized a piece and a part of it. And it came with an emotion, a feeling, a perception. It came with light. It was like all of the stars in the galaxy were singing a harmony, structures of sonority he had never heard, and yet he knew the tune. Singing in light. Oh, Woe had felt this before. Woe knew he was dead. What happens next, nobody knows. Everybody supposes it. But nobody really knows on the planet what happens next, and Woe was right there, and he wasn't afraid. Because he knew, because of his box of belief, what to expect. At least he thought he did. He started noticing that he was being passed by other human forms. And the human forms were his office workers. But he was being passed by them, and he looked down and realized he was being held in place in this wind of transition by a silver cord. And he couldn't go any further. And the music continued, and he began to recognize it more and more. He saw ahead of him a beautiful, bright, golden white light. He saw that all those who were passing him were moving into that light, and he had it figured out. They're going to meet God. They had died with him. But why wasn't he moving forward? He strained at the silver cord with all of his might, if you can call it that, without having a body of some kind, just some kind of ethereal thing with arms and legs and a head. Hard to describe how it feels in that transition, in that wind moving from the corporeal self to the spiritual self. Woe was in that wind of transition, held by a silver cord, watching as others passed him, moving into the light. The music became stronger, not louder, but stronger, invading almost every cell of his etheric body that was becoming less and less corporeal and more transparent. Woe was in the wind of transition, but he was stuck by the silver cord. And then he noticed something. Every single human form that was passing him glowed in an odd way. Inside each one of them, there was a glowing object with a pattern. A pattern that he recognized, and yet he didn't recognize. It wasn't a symbol, it wasn't a number, it was a pattern. A beautiful light pattern inside every single one of them. And everyone had one. The light at the end of this seeming tunnel, which was not a tunnel at all, was growing brighter. He was not getting any closer to it, but it was growing brighter. He could hear or feel or perceive the music now, and he knew what it was. It was the constant, continuous music of the love of God, a patterning at a soul level that sung the song of compassion, the song of home, the song of oneness that he knew so well. Where did this come from? How did he recognize it? And they continued to pass him. It seemed like hundreds had been killed in the tornado. They were all on the same path, going through this transition, and they all had the same glowing essence, with the same pattern. And as the bright light before him opened up, he saw it. It was the same essence with the same pattern. They were all pieces of the pattern. Woe was consumed with curiosity as a numbers man. At the same time, he was emotion of not knowing why he could not proceed. He strained at the silver cord. He wanted to go forward and join the light. The music continued. Every single one of them, All those workers in his office, all going to the light, to the same place. And the light got bigger, and he got to see even more. And what he saw was a celebration of life. What he saw in that crack that he could see was a reunion. And there was joy. There was not judgment. There was joy. And it's not what he was taught. And it was beautiful. It didn't matter who it was. They were all collecting and moving past him, and he wanted so much to go forward. Held by that tether. Held by that tether. And he wondered, is this the way it's going to be? Is this some place where you're stuck between worlds? Why am I not moving forward or back? What is going on? But he wasn't frustrated because he was in the wind of love. Woe awoke in the hospital, surrounded by his family, and realized what had happened. He had been in a coma. Now we stop the parable again to explain that woe had just had what has been called by humanity as an NDE, a near-death experience. We rename that, by the way, NLE, near-life experience. No one comes back from an NDE and recovers. They come back changed. No human can go into the wind of transition even temporarily without being affected at the corporeal essence level. Something happens to them. It's difficult to explain, but when you're in the wind of transition, you're changed. And the longer you're in the wind, the more changes occur. The very essence of your awakened spirit expands. It's like every moment in the wind is like another lifetime of wisdom that you live and you see. And woe came back and opened his eyes. And the family stood around him. And he knew instantly he was alive, but that he had witnessed something extremely real. And he looked around and he had a new gift. For every single corporeal family human member standing around the bed had a glowing essence with a pattern. He was able to see God in everyone. They celebrated his life, and eventually he healed. And the first time he got up and went into the room with a mirror, he saw it in himself. The glow was there, the pattern was there. He looked at the doctors, the nurses. He went out on the street, and they all had it. Now what happens next may surprise you. Woe could have done anything at this point because woe had knowledge beyond his box of belief. In fact, it conflicted with his doctrine. It conflicted with an idea of a judgmental God. It conflicted with the rules. To confirm it, woe did something he never told anybody about. When nobody knew where woe was, woe visited another box. He visited the one that his leadership had told him was the worst. And he went in and sat. And what he saw, he already knew. They all had the essence, they all had the glow, and they all had the pattern. And he didn't recognize the songs that they sang, but they were about the love of God. And in this place he saw crutches that were hung in certain places to represent the healings that occurred in the box, and he knew what he was looking at. That human beings tend to sequester everything to themselves and never look around. And he was never told that the healings were in all the other boxes. He came back to his box, and this may shock you, but he never left. Because he had the wisdom that told him he didn't need to. He didn't need to upset anyone around him. He knew a truth that became his own. The love of God was the same, regardless of the doctrine. He sang the songs in another way. He heard the music in another way. And those around woe saw God in him in another way. Because of the experience that he had had, he was able to share with him the beauty of what it was like to transition to the other side, to give them hope so that there would be no sting of death. He never told them the whole story. He didn't have to. There was no reason to, because they were all seekers and searchers. When woe was in the wind of transition, he had heard a voice. He'll never forget it. And the voice spoke to him with his name as he was struggling against the silver cord. And the voice said, "Woe. When it's time, you'll be here too. Until then, celebrate the majesty of what you've seen in every cell. Because God is in you." And this is what he carried. And there was no instruction from the light to go back and evangelize it. And there was no instruction about telling everybody they were wrong. And there was no instruction to change anything but himself. And he lived his life in that fashion. He never upset the apple cart for those around him. He only showed God in himself. And that was good enough for woe. And we could end the parable by telling you there was a day that woe experienced the wind of transition without the cord. But we're not going to tell you that. Because we want to leave woe with you, alive and working in a society like you have to work. As an example of the God inside, of the patience and the wisdom and the benevolence and the compassion that this human had for everyone around him, regardless of the doctrine of the box. Because that's what we are looking at with you. It's a parable for the new age, where you will capture the essence inside you and see it in others like woe did. Woe's gift is yours. See God in others first, and see their personality second. And you will have more tolerance because of it. Because you're so different. Given in love this day. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Crying of Magnetic Service. As many times as we do this, there are those who would wonder, is the man still in his body? Of course. But his consciousness is split. Now, for some, they would say, well, this makes him a candidate for a psychologist. It is not that kind of split. Each of you have the ability to do what you see here, but it does not have to be in this form. There is a new energy beginning to form on the planet, and we are starting to discuss it. And 1 week ago, we gave you information regarding what to expect. Some weeks before that, we told you some of the inventions to look forward to. But in the process of human evolvement, it is inevitable that some of you will channel. And it does not have to be in public in front of other human beings. It can be for yourself. It can be what some have called automatic writing. By the way, there's nothing automatic about it. It is you stepping aside and in the privacy of your own sentience, existence, finding out the sacred part of you is alive and well. And being able then to channel that which is inside you. And some of you will not find an entity with a name, but you will start channeling pieces and parts of your own divinity. You will call it channeling, and really it's simply communication to the higher self. You getting in touch with the core soul that is you. And it will look like channeling. And it will be. The next step in human evolution is inward. Not outward, but inward. For the evolvement of the human species will be regarding what the brain is able then to do with all of the DNA in the body. There's over 100 trillion pieces of DNA. They're all identical. They're all bonded or entangled as one. And they all present one common field as the soul that you are. Now, science has not yet seen that, and they will. If every single piece of DNA is identical, how do they communicate? How does DNA then see the compartmentalization of cellular structure? One organ to the next. DNA produces genes, but what about the body communication that goes on? There's all manner of questions. We will start to answer one at a time as you start to see it evolve. You are finished with the old energy. Now, we had told you last week, and we are not going to repeat that much, what to expect right now. For there is a release going on, and you're starting to feel it. And the release will have some anomalies to it, and you're going to start to see it. We have told you that among the anomalies of the release are the darker energies of the earth realizing they're losing. A last gasp, if you wish, to some older energy processes that will raise their heads and pretend they're in charge. And they won't be. And you will watch them be dismissed, probably for the first time in human history. Today we're going to give you potentials. We're going to tell you some things. I would like to start with this. Echoing and continuing last week's channeling, we would like to give you a 5-point 2013 Old Soul Toolkit. That is to say, 5 points for you to look at. Things that some of you will need and others will not. Realization is something we have that the ones listening are more than the ones in the room. And we have said this many times. If you've tuned into this, and it doesn't matter what your clock says or your calendar says, we know who you are. The potentials of your evolved soul listening to this message is right in front of us. We are in contact with your higher self that knows your plan. We are in contact with that which you would think is a predisposed attitude you might or might not do something. We know that. And so if you're listening to this message, or you're reading it, you're right where you belong. And we know you. And so to a small group of people, less than 200, this is now. But if you are hearing this for the first time, it is also now. So let me ask you, who's right? Which now is it? And the answer is, it's always now. For the teaching, as it reaches that part of you which resounds to the truth, can be any time. The love of God has no clock. And we are so aware of the paths that are in front of you that bring you to places like this where you can hear in person, read, or listen. And to us, it's all happening at the same time. And so we greet you, even the ones that those in the room cannot see. Difficult to explain these things, it is. The energy is different. And some of you are going to start feeling it. There's a lot of things scheduled to happen that have always been scheduled to happen. As soon as the marker was passed. The 2012 energy, which contained a great deal of fear, has passed. And so there is a clearing, you might say, of the playing field of energies from now on. And it is real and it is true. And when you take a look at those things which may be esoteric to you, they are being honored. And that would be the precession of the equinoxes and the midpoint of it. And there are many things you need for your toolkit. Number one, tolerance. Now I'm going to talk to old souls and old souls. And when I talk about tolerance, I'm talking to old souls and old souls. You have been very tolerant for a long time of new souls. You've been tolerant of the old energy. Now I'm going to ask you to be tolerant of one another. Because some of you are not going to like what takes place next. And the best way to explain this is to say that if, for instance, you have been a healer for 30 years, you have a process, you have energies you've dealt with, you know what you're doing. And now it starts to rewrite itself. And some of the things that are the core essence of what you've been doing and what you've been taught and the things that work, you're going to hear are changing. And you're going to disagree. And the bias that you are going to have as an old soul will be obvious. And you will say, no, that cannot be right. You always have to do this or that. The signals that you will get to tell you what to do in a process that you have been working with are the signals you depend on. The intuitive parts is what you depend on. Even the channeler will have a new paradigm before him that he must work on. For with new energy, the relationship between the human corporeal body and that which you call the intelligent body and higher self will start to shift. Pathways that you may call neural will start to be built that are quantum between the corporeal self and the intelligent corporeal self. That is to say, that some of you are starting to get a concept of being able to talk to your own cellular structure and get feedback. And there would be those who are invested in kinesiology who would say, no, you have to do it another way. We've done this for decades. This is how it's done. And you will say, well, I can do it different. And so some of you are going to have to be tolerant. Open-minded, old soul, for new processes, or ones that rewrite the processes that you have lived by, survived by. If you don't, it's going to slow down the process of planet Earth. For then there will be a split in the old souls. And you don't want that. But if that is your choice, dear ones, I will tell you that the new energy is here forever. You're not going to slip back. You can't. I have said before, my partner has mentioned, you cannot unknow things that have taken place. And as you take a deep breath in the new energy and get used to new paradigms, you cannot then return to the old. So for those who are invested in processes, procedures, learnings, feelings, intuitive energies that you have used for years, we ask you for tolerance. And before you would judge or speak, look at the beauty of an evolving earth. Look at the beauty of an old soul which can now start to claim the things we always said you could do. 23 years my partner has been telling you what might be possible, and now you stand at the cusp of doing it. That was number one. Some of you are going to see this, and it's not going to take long. Books will be written. Some will object. There will be those who are learned and successful and have profound proof of their abilities, and they won't change. And they'll object to you. And they'll say, God doesn't move that fast. It doesn't work that way. And I have a message for them. It wasn't fast. It took thousands of years. And God does work that way. Just ask the indigenous whose ancestors told you the day would come. And it's here. This is not new. But there is shift, and it is dramatic. Some of you will see what I mean. Some of you will lose friends because of it. Old souls that just won't go there. That's number one. Number two, we're going to state it again, and it was last week, patience. These things that we speak of are going to take a while. Last week we gave you the story of the farmer. The beginning one. the attribute of the amateur who plants the seeds and runs the next day to watch them grow, only to discover that they cannot be seen growing. And that is the way it's going to appear, too slow. You'll watch your news, you'll watch your government, you'll watch the earth. And some of you will say, well, I don't really see much that's different. Any more than you can see the crops grow. There is a slow, methodical, consistent change in consciousness. Some of it cannot be obtained until old energy dies. Some of it will not be realized until some of those in charge of old energies are no longer in charge of them. Some of them will not reveal themselves until youth takes the position of leadership. And some of you were saying, that's just too long. Patience. What we need you to do, dear ones, in your toolkit is to understand that your being here as an old soul is the food for the plants to grow. You can't just check out and say, I waited long enough. I don't want to go through another 18 years. Picture it like this, dear ones. You now have the water can for the seeds. And before 2012, there were no seeds. Now they're no longer those energies, and not only do you have the seeds, you have the water can. And so every morning you wake up and water them. And those who come after you will see full crops. This is the next thing in your toolkit, and that is patience and understanding and tolerance for things you didn't expect. In a new paradigm, there are going to be things you didn't expect, and you may look at them and say, no, not understanding this was the way of it all along. So let me talk about one. Number 3, attitude adjustment. Some of you are starting to put together some things that Koshain has said. Years and years ago, I channeled information that has now come to fruition. And now you'll understand it, and then you did not. We gave you this phrase, when everyone can talk to everyone, there can be no secrets. This has now become something called social networking. Back before even the phrase existed, I told you about it. A time on the planet when all could talk to all. Instantly. Can you see how that would disarm old paradigms of communication? Do you see how that might disarm information which was not right? Do you see how that might disarm drama, untruth? When everyone can talk to everyone, and they are. So the technology has given you the beginning of something that some of you, especially the ones who are older old souls, look at and don't want anything to do with and say it's a fad of the young people. The third tool in your kit is attitude adjustment. I want you to look at it. I want you to let a young person show you what they can do. How many friends that they can talk to instantly when they want to communicate something and they put it in a place and suddenly hundreds know. Instantly. It is a new paradigm of the way human beings are going to communicate. And I want to tell you where that's going to lead. For social networking has no borders. So let's just go right to it. What happens when an Israeli is talking to an Iranian or a Palestinian about something they saw on YouTube or some energy they want to share? And it flies across the borders in a way that it never could before. What happens to the intermingling of friends in a paradigm that you may never understand and never see, and they do, where hundreds can talk to each other instantly in a land where they never did before? Slowly there will be a lessening of the objections to countries who are trying to stop this, when they understand more about the benefits to them. And it will have to do with trade and the other things that are important to economies, when they start to understand that social networking may very well be the answer to recession. There is more here than meets the eye, dear ones, and your attitude is everything. For if you look at all this and say, well, this is a fad, this is just for the young, you're missing it. Totally. Let a young person explain what they can do, and let the light bulb go on in your mind for the evolution of the human species. For this is never going away. It's only going to get worse. And we say that in a facetious way. Will there come a day when this will be the way of it in all things? It'll be impossible to be a hermit. You'll always have more friends than you want. These are the things we are asking you to look forward to. And it's going to require you look at them differently and adjust. That was number 3. Number 4, physical body. It has to recalibrate to a new energy. And it's going to do so no matter what you want. You gave intent to stay, dear one. So you have given permission for physical chemistry changes to occur in you. And for some of you, that's called illness. But it isn't. It's simply temporary imbalance of chemistry. And so what we're going to say next is that some of you will go through what you would think are physical trials, and there are some in the room who are already in it. And that's what it's about. This is going to be a faster evolution in certain ways than you think. For it's going to affect the ones who have chosen to stay and move into this next paradigm. Because it is difficult. Because it may actually put stress on the chemistry of the body as it recalibrates. And when it takes place, you'll know what I'm talking about. And when it takes place, do not fear it. And so we give you a challenge, a dare, if you will. That comes from my partner. Celebrate imbalance. And whether it's in your muscle structure or in your intestine or any of those places where you don't know where it came from and why it's there, I challenge you to say, thank you, God, that I am recalibrating. Or I am evolving. And I know why. You're supposed to stay, dear ones, and water the plants. And you'll see what I mean. There will be some unexpected things. And now I'm going to be very cautious with number 5. And I'm going to change a paradigm of the way we channel. for 23 years, we give you information in the soup of potentials that we read to you as the highest probable potential that exists. These things eventually often become your reality because they are free choice, but we know what you're thinking. We know what the potentials are because we know where you're leaning. We know what the biases are. And we see all of humanity as a whole. It's measurable. Not by you, easily. And it gives us, therefore, the ability to project. And we do. 23 years ago, we gave you many things and we told you that now are in your reality. Well, I'm going to depart from that, and I'm going to now read to you a potential on earth that is not the strongest. I'm going to tell you about a human being that has a choice. I'm going to give you a potential that is only 50%. But I'm going to read to you something, an energy you didn't expect, a paradigm that is starting to shift. Let's talk about North Korea. There is a young new leader. The potential is he will never, ever hear this channeling. So I can talk freely. He is facing a dilemma. For he is young and he knows about the difference in the energy. He feels it. The lineage of his father lays upon him. And all that is around him expects him to be a clone of that man. To continue the things that he has been taught make North Korea great. And he's starting to rethink them. What makes a world leader great? So I want you to ask that question to a man in an older energy that you know. And his name is Napoleon. Not that long ago, dear ones. Not in the history of humanity. Not in the history of the earth. It was yesterday, and some of you were there. If you ask Napoleon what makes a world leader great, he will say the size of his army. How many countries he can conquer. How important he is based upon how many citizens then call him king. Not only was that his reality, but he was right. And so Napoleon went back and forth between world leader, general, and prisoner. And he accomplished everything he set out to do, almost. What makes a world leader great? What I am showing you is the difference in thinking between then and now. And the choices that an evolved young human being has that could change everything on the planet if he wanted. His father will tell this North Korean young person that what makes a world leader great is the potential of his missile power. Or what impresses his people as he stands up against the West. How he continues to aggravate those in the South. And that is his lineage, and that's what he's been told all his life. Now, there's a 50% chance of something. This is not a strong potential, dear ones. But I'm bringing this forward for you're going to watch it work one way or the other. If Cryon were to advise this man, here is what I would tell him. He could be the greatest leader the world has ever known. For what he does now will be something the world will see as a demarcation point. Not only that, what he does now will be in the history books, and almost every other leader on the planet, he's going to outlive them. So he's going to have a longer fame than anyone. And it starts like this. Tell the border guards to go home and greet the South. Unify North and Korea and South Korea in a way that no prophet ever said could happen. Start alliances with the West and show them that you mean it. Bring abundance to your people that they never expected. And the result will be fame and glory that the Father never achieved. That the world will talk about. A United Nations that will stand and applaud when you walk in. If I would advise him, and I would say, wouldn't you like that? Now watch him. He has a choice. He has his father's advisors, one of which he's already dismissed. He may get it. He may not. 50% chance. But I'll tell you, if he doesn't do it, the one after him will. Because it is so obvious. We show you this to tell you that this is the evolvement of the human species. The slow realization that putting things together is the answer to all things and not separating. Those that start seeing compromise and energies they never realized before will be the ones you're going to remember. And it's going to happen in leadership, in politics, in business. A new paradigm. And so that particular tool is this, the realization that the reality you think works may not. You don't know what you don't know. But you can still plan for things that are coming that you don't know. If you know they're coming. It's like driving on a road, then you've been told it's going to widen up and the traffic's going to flow soon. And you believe it and you know it and you prepare for it. You don't know when it's coming and you don't know what that means. But when it comes, you're ready. And you breathe a sigh of relief and you said, I knew that would happen. And so we close with that. And now you can watch as the world watches to see what this young man does. If he's smart enough to see the new energy the way he has the ability to, and become perhaps one of the world's most beloved leaders, wise beyond his years, with fame that no one could achieve, or whether he doesn't. Slowly there will be those who start to understand and see that unification is the answer to all things. And as hard as it is for enemies to unify with enemies, it will be their survival. For to continue the way they are, they'll die on the vine. And the old energy is no longer going to support the old ways. Watch for it. It's going to happen sooner than not. We'll close with the same thing we closed with before. Human being, do not fear what you're about to see. For the old energy will flail and die hard. And it's not going to go easily into the sunset with its head down. It's going to fight. I give you this as a metaphor. You'll see it, you'll know it, you'll understand it. Don't fear it. There'll be a period of recalibration and adjustment as this earth moves in slowly to an energy coming into the sun. The city on the hill slowly being revealed. The New Jerusalem. And so it is.